So in analyzing Raise the Red Flag, what better place to start than with the title? Now, the act of raising a flag is mostly a nautical concept. There are signal flags that ships can use to send messages to one another, but it's probably most culturally associated with piracy, the Jolly Roger. What's interesting is that the black flag that we all know is actually one that was originally used as a way of trying to bargain with ships that were being robbed. A black flag meant they would offer you quarter. So if you gave them some valuables, they would leave you alone and they wouldn't hurt you. But if they raised the red flag, that meant no quarter. They were going to kill you and take everything. The idea of raising a red flag is also commonly used today as signaling danger. If something raises a red flag, that means it's dangerous. By naming the title Raise the Red Flag, it reframes that concept as signaling his return in triumph, which comes up later in the lyrics, as we'll see. There's also some very interesting things with the color red. Red is invoked by the radiant energy of specific wavelengths, which increase muscle tone, blood pressure, breath rate, and in some cases, sexual arousal. These effects occur in blind humans and animals, so red is not simply a visual concept. It's attractive and symbolic of life, blood, and fire, but inversely it signals danger, like blood leaving the body or a fire out of control. In alchemy, reddening was the last stage of the process of making gold. Next, we can go over the cover a little bit. I love this cover. It instantly reminded me of this particular photograph from the celebritarian era. The white, I think, is what does it for me. In the lyric from the song, "My red flag is your white one soaked in blood," is interesting because he's completely white. In fact, the cover is completely devoid of any red at all, other than the title of the song in a very small font. I do like the cross as well. The light-dark dichotomy is, of course, classic Marilyn Manson, but it specifically reminds me of the Marilyn Mickey photographs that were shot, which feature a sort of blackface-esque Marilyn Mickey that's almost completely black, and then another Marilyn Mickey that's almost completely white. The darkness of the cross reminds me of that white Mickey. It just has this very quiet, foreboding quality to it that I find very interesting. The cross also implies Christianity and death and resurrection, which is probably going to be a recurring concept in the upcoming album. Now, the first line is, this may be a slight nod to JFK and more Hollywood references. His assassination and autopsy featured prominently in Hollywood's promotional material and the album artwork, both thematically and literally. An autopsy is also something that is performed to discover or confirm a cause of death. It's investigative and it's scientific, which to me is kind of similar to how a court proceeding can be like the autopsy of an event or a crime. Everything is factual, everything is investigated and laid out. But the word choice is very interesting here. The autopsy table is ready. It's ready to be performed. It's like he's going to open you up. Then there's pay off the drug deals you made with God. This instantly made me think of a line from the song Running to the Edge of the World.
God crossed us, we take all his drugs, burn his money and his house down. Wait for the fire to spread.
It's a reference to Evan Rachel Wood and the High End of Low era without being too obvious. Drug deals with God in particular is interesting, and I wonder if it might be a play on the song Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush. The song is about how men and women hurt each other unintentionally and how they don't understand each other, and speaks about a deal with God that the narrator wishes she could make to change places with her lover so that they could empathize with and understand each other better, which I find interesting because that era and kind of the situation Manson finds himself in does have to do with relationships and lacks of empathy. So in the Kate Bush song, while a deal with God might sound like a pact or a sacred covenant, a drug deal, on the other hand, is something more darker and related to carnal, earthly desires. Also, now that I think of it, Running to the Edge of the World might have even been a play on the lyric from the song, which goes, running up that hill, and then it changes to hill, road, building. I don't have any evidence for this, but it's an interesting thought. If it was, and he was kind of hearkening back to that with this, plus the high end of low lighting and imagery, that'd be neat. Then we have crucifixion. So a last meal is something granted to a prisoner before their execution. Again, this is kind of invoking legal, criminal kind of imagery. There's also the nod to the crucifixion, which makes me think this could be more about funeral rites. Interestingly, in China and Stone Age Europe, red pigment was buried with the bones of the dead for renewal of life. Then you have I won't accept your surrender. Raising or waving a white flag is generally seen as a sign of surrender. And it's also interesting that forgiveness is kind of a Christian or Christ-like trait. So not accepting surrender also means not forgiving. Then we have I think most people have correctly pegged this as a nod to Lunchbox. It comes from a story of Manson defending himself from bullies on the schoolyard using a metal lunchbox. The line, I think it's also important that he uses the word bullies and characterizes these people that way, because they don't care about the issues that they talk about. They just want the social standing so they can bully and abuse other people. Some people have also criticized this line as lame or immature, but I think that's intentional. It harkens back to very early Manson as the symbol for outcasts, people who were unwanted and sought some kind of belonging. His return is as much a return to people like that as it is for him. And it seems like society is more concerned about policing conformity than ever. So in order to raise the red flag, that would first require him to have the blood of his enemies in which to soak it. Again, this is invoking fighting back and triumph. Also, interestingly enough, in Roman times, red meant war and a call to arms. The red flag was carried as a sign of defiance in European battles as early as the 1600s. So, raising the red flag is raising it in the name of war and defiance. One thing I love about this is that you can read it as being about the allegations, but it's not obviously about that. You can interpret it in many different ways. I think that's important because it helps to give the song a more timeless quality rather than dating it to being specifically about the allegations in his situation. Like, I could see someone who doesn't know anything about the allegations but is vaguely aware of who Marilyn Manson is, seeing it as just kind of a snarky line about religion. Characterizing the idiots is also important, because the people who latch on to these kinds of hoaxes tend to not be very intelligent. They're just into them for the hate and anger involved. This even goes back to Columbine, when there was a mob blaming him for the shooting, and even people getting ready to protest his concerts because they were under the belief that Manson caused the shooting, and if they played in his town, there would be more shootings. This one is a bit more on the nose and about the situation at hand. The kind of people who go for these things are very gross. They live vicariously through these liars, abusing the system to try to destroy people as part of their own personal vendettas, because deep down they wish they could do the same thing. You can see it in their behavior and how they wield the entire situation as a bludgeon against others. They don't care about Manson's supposed victims, but they love shutting down his fans anytime they try to discuss his art in public. That's what it's all about for them. Policing social conformity, power, and control. Then we have I love this line. If you spent any amount of time on the internet discussing or debating politics, you may have run into someone that uses this gem. I'm on the right side of history. But that's exactly what the people who try to destroy Manson think, because they're on the right side of history. It's for the right reasons. Finally, I did want to talk about this a little bit. When we got the single for Raise the Red Flag, it also showed that there's a new third song we haven't heard yet called Front Toward Enemy. So this is something that's often put on various explosives, such as missiles, but I thought of claymores when I first saw this. And if you don't know what a claymore is, it's a type of mine. You stand it up, and printed on the front is Front Toward Enemy. And it has a motion sensor, and maybe there's others that work in different ways, but whenever someone walks in range, it explodes with shrapnel in that particular direction. It's often referred to as an anti-personnel weapon. So front can refer to the front of an object, or putting up a front, like pretending to be someone or something you're not. Or a front like a battlefield, the Western Front, the Eastern Front, and so on. Or it can refer to weather, like a cold front. So I like that idea of front toward enemy. It can be a front as in the front Manson puts on stage and kind of his bravado and his pomp. It can be the war that he's currently waging against the people who try to destroy him. Or it can be a front like a force of nature, which Marilyn Manson is in some ways. And he's directing all of that towards his enemy. I also like toward, because you separate it and it's to ward. Ward as in like being the ward of a state, someone under your care. Or to ward. Ward, like in magic, you ward something to protect yourself, but it's obviously just toward, but I like the wordplay there. I thought that was cute.